Talking about ice at the two poles, if you ask when it will all melt, you must clearly distinguish between the Arctic and the Antarctic because they are completely different situations. One place is struggling day by day, with its ice expected to completely melt in summer within just a few decades. The other place is much more enduring, preserving ice for thousands of years before it finally gives in. So first, we need to understand just how much ice there is at the Arctic and Antarctic. This question may sound simple, but the ice at the two poles is not just a big chunk of ice. It is an enormous ice reservoir holding a massive amount of water on the planet. The Arctic is a unique place because its ice floats on the sea surface rather than lying on land. This sea area covers most of the Arctic Ocean and sits at the northernmost point of the Earth, true to its name. The total area of Arctic sea ice in winter reaches about 15 million square kilometers, which is nearly the size of the entire United States. Meanwhile, in the summer, as temperatures rise, the ice melts significantly and only ranges from 4 to 6 million square kilometers. But a more important factor is the thickness of the ice. While Antarctic continental ice can be kilometers thick, the Arctic ice is much thinner. It ranges from only 1 to 3 meters thick. The prime time of the Arctic was during the 1990s, when the sea ice thickness averaged from 3 to 4 meters. But now, due to climate change, the ice has thinned significantly. Currently, the average thickness is only 1 to 2 meters, with rare patches reaching 3 meters. To help visualize, if you gathered all the ice in the Arctic together, its volume would be roughly 9,000 cubic kilometers of water, a very modest figure compared to Antarctica. While the Arctic is a fragile floating ice layer on the ocean, Antarctica is the ice king of the planet, holding an enormous amount of ice. Antarctica sits on a vast continent with an area around 14 million square kilometers. The ice sheet there is on average between 2,000 to 4,800 meters thick. In some areas, the ice is even thicker than 4,800 meters, enough to bury many of the tallest buildings on Earth. Antarctica currently holds about 27 million cubic kilometers of ice. That equals 90% of all the ice on the planet and 70% of the Earth's fresh water. Just imagine what would happen if all the Antarctic ice melted, how much the world's water levels would rise. You will learn the answer shortly. At that time, the entire world would lose its coastlines as we know them today. If you combine all the Earth's ice, Antarctica carries the bulk with 90% of total ice, and the Arctic is just a small portion. But the worrying part is that the melting speed at both poles is increasing. The Arctic is an extremely sensitive place to climate change. Most of the Arctic ice is sea ice, meaning it floats on the water's surface, unlike the continental ice in Antarctica. Therefore, when Arctic ice melts, sea levels hardly rise. Scientists have clear predictions. If the current warming rate continues, then by summer between the years 2030 and 2035, meaning still within our lifetime, the Arctic will be ice-free, and by the end of this century, during our descendants' time, the Arctic could be ice-free year-round. The evidence is that currently the sea ice here has shrunk by 75% in area compared to the 1980s. The current melting rate is about 13% per decade. The Arctic sea ice area in September has dropped to only 4.2 million square kilometers, a more alarming figure compared to the former 7 million square kilometers. And sadly, if the Arctic loses all ice in summer, all efforts to restore it will be almost futile because warming will erode winter ice even faster. While the Arctic melts quickly, Antarctica is a harder story. Antarctica is different from the Arctic because its ice rests on land, forming a continental ice sheet. Other countries shook their heads in disappointment. It's the industrial age, yet eating like this is worse than farmers in other European countries. English cuisine now looked like a hard-working guy, kind but lazy, just wanting to finish work fast, no fancy touches. But the real knockout for English cuisine came in World War I and II, when the world tasted bombs and the English tasted. Delta and the Chesapeake Bay area would hardly be seen on the map anymore. At that time, living in high mountain regions will truly be the safest option. Fortunately, Antarctic ice doesn't melt easily because Antarctica is extremely cold. The average temperature here is typically tens of degrees below 0 Celsius, and in some places the ice is nearly 5 kilometers thick. With such vast size and harsh climate, Antarctic ice will need at least from 1,000 to 10,000 more years to fully melt, depending on the Earth's warming rate. But don't think there's still much time to be complacent. Scientists have discovered that in the last 25 years, Antarctica has lost about 150 billion tons of ice every year. Especially coastal ice sheets and large glaciers are shrinking and raising alarms. Now let's try a calculation. The total ice in the Arctic, Antarctica, and Greenland represents the largest freshwater reservoir in the world. If Antarctica's ice melts completely as mentioned, sea levels will rise 58 to 60 meters. Adding melting ice from Greenland and other places, the total sea level rise will be about 65 to 70 meters. At this point, the world's largest cities will be submerged without any trace left. New York City with the Statue of Liberty will be underwater, with even the statue submerged. London, the grand capital, will be gone as well, and New York will face the same fate. When the ice melts, humanity will no longer have time to prepare, because everything will be swept into a massive crisis: rising seas, loss of land, and crumbling agriculture. The immediate consequence will be billions of people losing their homes. Those living in coastal cities and low-lying areas will be forced to migrate to higher ground. But one must ask, do mountains have enough space to cram billions of people? Furthermore, food security will be threatened as farmland disappears, droughts persist, and food becomes scarcer than ever. The global economy will falter as cities sink underwater. Infrastructure will be destroyed, and the global supply chain will be completely paralyzed. Not only that, ice at the two poles acts like a giant air conditioner for Earth. The white ice surface acts like a massive mirror, helping reflect sunlight back into space. When the ice melts, the surface of the dark ocean will be exposed and absorb more heat, causing global temperatures to rise rapidly. If this happens, the Earth's average temperature will increase by at least 3 to 5 degrees Celsius. That may sound small, but in reality, it is catastrophic. Solvent. These steps ensure the cup shines more brightly. Afterwards, the trophy is dipped into a gold plating tank before being rinsed with distilled water. The base of the cup is fitted with green jade stones. They dry and polish the trophy one more time, then transfer it to the quality control department. Heat waves will last longer and be stronger, pushing millions into dehydration and exhaustion. For example, on a single day in Washington, D.C., just stepping outside at 38 degrees Celsius feels intensely hot. Now imagine Earth's temperature rising by several more degrees, skies filled with storms, and land becoming so scorched and cracked it resembles the Sahara Desert. The ecosystems of the Arctic and Antarctic will be the first places to collapse. Polar bears, the iconic animals of the icy regions, will lose their hunting grounds. No more ice to stand on, no more fish to eat. The bears will have to swim endlessly in the sea until exhaustion. The situation is no better for emperor penguin colonies in Antarctica as their habitats vanish. It's not just polar animals, the entire ocean food chain will be disrupted. Melting ice will release millions of years' worth of trapped methane and carbon dioxide from the permafrost, causing Earth's warming to spiral out of control. To summarize, the Arctic could be ice-free in summer from 2030 to 2035. Antarctica, however, will take thousands of years to melt completely. But the problem is, we don't have to wait for all the ice to melt. Even a small portion of ice melting in Antarctica or Greenland will cause significant sea level rise, enough to submerge millions of square kilometers of land. Currently, the sea has risen about 21 to 24 centimeters since 1993, and this rate is accelerating. If greenhouse gas emissions continue and the global temperature keeps rising above 2 degrees Celsius, the situation will become far worse. This shows that climate change is no longer a distant issue just seen on TV. The Arctic and Antarctic are early warnings about the future. If humanity fails to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, limit fossil fuel burning, and protect the environment, the day when the ice melts entirely may come sooner than predicted. Then, without a worldwide catastrophe, life will already be difficult because the sea will have swallowed all human habitable land. Thank you for your attention to this story. If you found it interesting, you may press the subscribe button, turn on notifications, and share it. For now, allow me to say goodbye. Farewell.